Raja Faisal. And we've also been joined online by former Ambassador Dr. Jamil. Thank you very much, Dr. Jamil, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And I'll start with you, Dr. Jamil, when we take a look at what has been going on, of course, in terms of the way that this genocide has continued for this long. The UN, of course, has come out and spoken about the mass displacement that has occurred since the 1960s. It has spoken about how there are forced displacements happening in camps. But we know that so much worse is also going on in terms of targeted killings. And of course, the entire way in which the occupying forces have acted and even demolished the homes of the Palestinians. And so I want your take in terms of what that will mean for the way that these reports or these figures or these statements coming in from platforms such as the UN, will they make a difference to the situation or the suffering of the people of Palestine?
So long as the United Nations Security Council has a veto power, it would not mean anything. As a matter of fact, we have seen the floods of people on the roads everywhere, whether it was Europe or North America. We have seen all those protests and processions. We have seen people, those who have any consideration for the humanity, they have been marching on the roads and they've been protesting. But the people, but the countries who have their geopolitical consideration, who have their geopolitical consideration, which is very ruthless, even while it comes to the humanity, while it comes to the human rights, it's very ruthless, as a matter of fact. And that's what it has been proved. The 4 times the ceasefire and the humanitarian aid, what was tabled on the agenda of the Security Council was vetoed by the United States of America because of the geopolitical considerations, because of the fact that the United Nations has always, in all circumstances, good, bad or worse, right or wrong, have been supporting Israel. And there are reasons for it. We've discussed it earlier. I'll just give us some glimpses of it even today. And that is basically how the United Nations foreign policy, particularly once it comes to Israel, how that is influenced by the Israeli lobby. And it's not my comments. These are the comments of very renowned political scientist, Jamil. I've quoted him earlier also, and his book at the Israeli lobby. So that comes in effect, and then that has its impact even in the Security Council once the United States or its allies, for example, France and UK, they side with the United States. And therefore, all those resolutions which have been tabled and all those voices like the UNRWA voices, the gentleman in the UNRWA, head of the United Nations UNRWA, is the Filippo Lazzarini, who has been my colleague while I was in the United Nations, and a very straightforward. He's been really shouting, and he's been really making all the cases in front of Security Council and in front of the world, the kind of human crisis, humanitarian needs there. The people, they can't have water even to survive, proper water. And they food, what to talk of food, there are about only 3 or 4 distribution points. And all those distribution points are being manned by the Israeli and the US contractors. And people have been profiled with the help of AI, and once they go to collect their food or water, they are targeted, they are killed. Even the Google cloud is being used for profiling of such people. So that's where we stand. That people are in the totally in a slaughterhouse. I would not even call it concentration camp, because they are not allowed to leave. They need a special permit to leave the Rafah corridor or the corridor which goes to the West Bank. The Rafah corridor, previously it was manned by Egyptians, now it is manned by even Israelis. So that's where they stand. They can't really go anywhere, they can't have food, and they are just having a malnutrition. We can see the kind of structure, the kind of weight they are losing. The children, they are suffering, and the United Nations has been really making human cry about it. Nothing has happened. So what is 649th day of Gaza war today, and the Qatari Prime Minister is there. Today I can have some ray of hopes that the Qatari Prime Minister and Donald Trump, they would be having a meeting. They will try and iron out the features of the ceasefire, although the three-phase ceasefire were already tabled, and Israeli Prime Minister has recently, just about 4 or 5 days ago, has finished his tour of 1 week, where he has been able to engage with Donald Trump, with the Congress, with the administration, with other stakeholders, and he was able to again rejuvenate his lobbying there, what John Mearsheimer has been mentioning. So that influence is there. So the today's meeting, which is going to happen in the next couple of hours between the Qatari Prime Minister and Donald Trump, I am having some ray of hope. Rather, I am having a very strong hope that there will be some announcement related to the ceasefire. And the agenda today, what we can conceive by looking at various literature, is that same phase-wise release of hostages. That's number one. An Israeli troop withdrawal, which Israeli Prime Minister has totally refused, that they would not have a complete withdrawal. They would have their presence in Gaza, and they need a complete elimination of Hamas. Now, they already have about 65 to 70% of the area of Gaza under their control, and the Gaza 44 kilometer by 12 kilometer, just a small strip. A total square kilometer is 365 square kilometer area that is totally sea, and the Israeli remaining about those 35-30% of the area, which Hamas still is showing some symbol of resistance, but they want to really capture all those people who are the resistance fighter. I won't call it even that they are doing a kind of resistance which they are putting. They are very much, trying to fight for their own land, occupied land, and which is allowed in the General Assembly Resolution 2649, where the people who find that their lands are occupied, they can. And that has been declared by the United Nations. Article 2, United Nations, that it is an occupied land which was occupied in 1967 and earlier. And according to United Nations Security Council Resolution number 242, the Israeli forces are supposed to really leave that occupation. They are really supposed to unoccupy that place and hand it over to the Palestinians. But that doesn't happen. So what does it boil down today? Middle East power shift today, we have to have that consideration. The Middle East, all the power who could be, who could assert themselves are subdued, totally subdued. Iran defiance. Now we have seen what had happened to Iran. Iran had put up its resistance, we know that. But still, now the resistance from the Iran is now symbolic. Houthis are the only component of the excess of resistance. They are putting up their resistance, and even yesterday they were able to sink a ship, and they are any ship moving towards the Red Sea there. So it's a total moral collapse of the world. The world watches Israeli forces brutalize Palestinians with immunity, and the International Criminal Court has issued the warrant of arrest, and whereas the same person against whom the warrant of arrest has been issued is applauded in the Congress and applauded in the administration of the nation.
Corruption charges are there against Netanyahu. It is on behest of Sarah Netanyahu, his wife. And yet, the media is silent. The institution is silent because the country has gone really to the dark side.
Right. Ambassador Saab, I want your take on this because, of course, as an ambassador, you've played the role of utilizing diplomatic channels and the power of diplomacy. But I want your take on where do you think it's lacking, or is there something in the approach that can be different? And if at all, diplomatic channels are effective, in your opinion? Because when we talk about peace and stability, there's always emphasis on using diplomacy, on going to the negotiating table, on having a dialogue. But when all of these diplomatic channels are failing, what use is diplomacy to us?
That's right. This is, I think, the last ditch effort that the Prime Minister of the Qatar, who is the main negotiator, in fact, who is the main mediator between Hamas and the Israel and other stakeholders like the United States. So he's there, and that's the highest level of diplomacy, and that's why I said that I have a ray of hope. I have a very strong hope that following this meeting with Donald Trump of the Qatari Prime Minister today, just a few hours down the line, we should expect some kind of news which could have some positive impact to us. But then ultimately, what I can see, and I just because I know that is they are compelled to the stage that either they die of hunger or they die of bullet, or they then finally choose to leave the place which Israel and with the support of the United States is trying to have for them, that is the neighboring country, and the humanitarian city which they are going to create. That is another purpose, that the Gaza should total be a part of that initial plan which Israel had. And Netanyahu is on record saying that we don't really want any Hamas, for instance. We want to have that Gaza under our control. And now they have gone one step beyond that. The Gaza is unlivable, so the Gaza should be really be taken over by Israel. So ultimately, that's what is a part of the greater Israel. And unfortunately, none of the countries can show that moral or legal courage to really stand against all the atrocities. What is going on? Because it's not all documented. What we are talking is all documented, and those documents are the part of the United Nations system, that's the International Criminal Court, and they are the one. They have given already their evidence, and they have issued the warrant on the basis of that evidence. And therefore, it appears that it's not going to work, because those who had given those warrants, they are already under sanction by the United States. Some of those judges. So this bit where we stand, and that's what the United Nations system is. It's so politicized, and it's so impacted by the members of the permanent member of the Security Council, that the world is really hostage in that system. And that's why I don't have much hope. The relationship between those countries who have the relationship with Israel, that relationship is flourishing. That relationship is going on. After today's meeting with Qatari ambassador, if there's some kind of a positive vibes, then I see some more countries joining Abraham Accord, and that seems to be the sequence of events subsequently, and hardly any further hope. You imagine, the Israeli Prime Minister, he goes and uses the airspace of the countries. There are about more than 8 countries he uses the airspace, and then they are obliged, the countries of which he is using the airspace, those countries are obliged to really enforce the warrant, and they can always ask the aircraft to land into their country and hand over the person against whom the arrest warrant is issued, that is Netanyahu, to the the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. But who would have that courage, basically? In fact, the business as usual with all the countries with which the Israelis have their relationship, the diplomatic relationship, and it's totally unimpacted. And I have really cited that for 57 countries bloc, which are the legitimate bloc under the United Nations Charter, Chapter 8. Obviously, they also seem to be helpless. The entire world seems to be helpless in this regard. And then the Palestinians, I really don't see much the brighter future. And I see what I can see writings on the wall, that they are now in the situation either they die or they try and choose to really accept the offer of Netanyahu of moving to some third country where they have already made their arrangements. And in that context,
thank you very much, Dr. Jamil Ahmed Khan, for joining us and being a part of the discussion and sharing your views, because that's, of course, very essential in terms of what's going on. But we'll also move on